Hey everyone, welcome back to RetroBreak Replay. In today's episode, I'm taking a look at another childhood favourite, and that is the original Sonic Adventure. Well, in fact, as a kid, I never actually played the Dreamcast version because I never actually owned a Dreamcast. The version that I played back in the day, and the one that I've got the fond memories of, is Sonic Adventure DX on the GameCube, which I actually rented from Blockbuster the day it came out, and I rented it many times over that time, but I never actually owned it myself. And I was wondering, when did I actually pick up the GameCube version? Well, my original GameStation receipt is in the box right here, and I actually bought it on the 25th of April 2009, so that is when I officially owned this copy of Sonic Adventure. But before that point, I did actually go back and get myself a Dreamcast and play the original, and today I'm replaying the original Sonic Adventure to see whether it lives up to my memories. Let's get started. I've always had mixed opinions about Sonic Adventure 1 because I actually grew up playing Sonic Adventure 2, like a lot of people my age did, because it was a launch title for the GameCube, and I was 8 years old at the time, and this is the perfect game to buy an 8-year-old, so I fell in love with Adventure 2, so when Adventure DX came out on the GameCube 2 years later, I was very excited to play it, and when I finally got my hands on a copy, I was left feeling more confused than anything. This wasn't anything like Sonic Adventure 2, this was like a completely different style of game, but over the years I've kind of grown fond of Sonic Adventure 1, and in some ways I actually think it is better than Adventure 2, so let me tell you why. I'd never actually fully completed Sonic Adventure 1 because I was always a little bit put off that it wasn't as good as Sonic Adventure 2, in my opinion, although my opinion might have changed these days. So I was very excited to stream this game over on Twitch and to finally actually play it all the way through to the end and beat the final boss, and that's exactly what I did. So straight away with this intro cutscene, you can really tell that Sega was trying to show off the possibilities of the Dreamcast here. Bear in mind that this is 1998, so seeing this running on the Dreamcast at the time must have been pretty mind-blowing. The music and the intro here is just so iconic, and I always love watching this before I get into the game. And like I said, Sonic Adventure 1 is very different to Adventure 2, and that is because it has a very unique structure that I've never really seen replicated in any 3D platformers to date. The game follows the interconnecting story of 6 different playable characters: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, E102 Gamma, and everyone's favourite, Big the Cat. Each one of these characters has a different playstyle and a different range of levels, although some of them do share the same environments, but the levels themselves are always slightly different for each character. At first, when you start the game, you've only got access to Sonic's story, but throughout that story, you actually find and interact with the other characters, and then you can choose to play as them as well, so it's not as overwhelming as it might first seem. And Sonic's story is thankfully the longest, and the more experimental gameplay styles like E102 and Big the Cat, they only actually have a few stages each. So although it may look like there's a lot here, it does actually only take a few hours to complete. Back in the day, I was very put off by the scope of this game, and I thought there's no way I'll ever be able to finish this. So I never even really tried to tackle anything further than Knuckles' story, really. So going into it this time on Twitch, Amy, Big, and Gamma were pretty much brand new experiences to me, and I honestly had a great time with all 3 of them. So a good place to start would probably be the gameplay loop, and it's really interesting. So basically, this game really lives up to its adventure name because the game has a variety of different adventure fields, and these are big open areas full of NPCs and secrets to find, and different entrances and exits between the different areas, and you actually use these hub worlds to find the action stages, but getting to each stage is kind of its own puzzle in itself. There's 11 different stages in total and 9 different boss fights along the way. It might not sound like much, but like I said, each of the characters mixes up those stages in their own unique style, so there is actually a lot of variety in here to look forward to. And not only that, but the stages also have 3 different missions assigned to them as well, which you can access from back on the title screen, so there is a load of replay value. Having all the different emblems to collect is a great way of extending the game's value, and I love the fact that they carried that on in Adventure 2 and in Sonic Heroes after that as well. So let's take a look at all the different characters and see how they all play. So Sonic, of course, consists of fast-paced platforming sections. It starts off with Emerald Coast, which is such an iconic first level. From the incredible music to just the amazing graphics for the Dreamcast at the time. The whole level is so cool, and it is a great introduction to what is a fantastic game. And the next level is also equally good, although I found out while I was actually playing this and doing a bit of research for this video that the original version of Windy Valley was going to be completely different. And what's even more exciting than that, there was actually a bunch of screenshots and videos that were shown off in 1997 and 8 back in the day, and a bunch of fans and modders have actually taken it upon themselves to recreate the beta version of Windy Valley and make it playable as a patch for the PC version of Sonic Adventure DX. So of course I downloaded that and gave it a go, and I have to say I am completely blown away, not just by what the modders have been able to achieve here, but also in the fact that the original level was going to be completely different and way bigger and more featured than the final game was. In fact, it almost feels like a completely different game. The way the level is structured is so much more open-ended and fun to explore, and it is kind of a shame that Sega didn't carry on with this style of level for the rest of the game, although the version of Windy Valley that we got in the final game is still a really fun level. And again, the music in this stage is just incredible too. I won't go into all of the different stages because this video could just go on for hours, so I'll just focus on a few more of my favourites. Twinkle Park is a really good one. I love the fact that they mixed up the formula here. You get actually a kart racing minigame to begin the stage with, which is so fun, and then you get to run around the theme park, and the level theming, and again, the music in that stage is just outstanding, it really is. Two more favourites of mine from the Sonic side of things. We've got Speed Highway, which is an absolute classic. Of course, that level was recreated and reimagined in the modern day in Sonic Generations. Well, I say modern day, that game's 11 years old now. How the hell did that happen? Anyway, the original Speed Highway is such a fun stage. It's got so many really cool set pieces, and I just love running along the highways above the city below. And once again, the graphics on the Dreamcast are just absolutely fantastic. They really nailed the aesthetic that they were going for with this game. And the final one of Sonic stages, which I really enjoy and is actually my favourite of all of Sonic levels, and that one is called Red Mountain. This is a really cool stage that starts outside of Volcano and then you go inside it. It's a really fun level to just blast your way through, and it's also quite challenging as well, and I really enjoy the challenge here. It's so fun. So that's basically what Sonic's story is like. You also get to fight Eggman a few times in between, and like I said, you get to meet all of the other characters, but the first character you meet in the game is Tails. And Tails' story, when you get around to playing as him, is also quite unique in the fact that you actually spend most of your time as Tails actually racing Sonic through the same stages that Sonic's in. They're just kind of shorter versions. There is one level though which I actually think is a lot better as Tails than it is as Sonic, and that is Casino Zone. So in Sonic's level, the casino is a really boring stage, and it really slows the pace of Sonic's levels down considerably, because in Sonic's version you have to collect 300 rings, I think it is, before you can finish the stage, and to do that you have to go through some really awkward pinball levels, of course. Sonic Team loved their really janky pinball physics, and this game is no exception. But as well as that, the level is just really slow and boring, but when you're playing it as Tails, it actually starts really fast paced and you're going through the sewers of the casino, and it's just really fun, and the rest of Tails' stages are like that as well. And Tails' story as a whole is just the right length to play through in one go. So as a kid, whenever I was playing through the Dreamcast or the GameCube game, it would always be Tails' story that I played first, because I can easily just whiz all the way through that. Now next up is Knuckles, and he's got a very different gameplay style. It's kind of similar to Sonic Adventure 2 if you've played that. So Knuckles' levels are actually treasure hunting stages, where you're actually finding shards of the Master Emerald. And these are basically taking some of Sonic's areas and expanding upon them. They're actually really fun to explore, and I also love the way the radar works in this game as well, because unlike Adventure 2, it can actually detect all three of the items that you're trying to find in one stage rather than have to do them one at a time. So that is a much better addition to this first game, and I really wish they'd carried that on in the second one. And Knuckles controls really well too, unlike some of the later games. So I actually really enjoyed Knuckles' story, and he also has the most interesting story side of it as well in the adventure fields. The whole game is kind of based around Knuckles, so it starts off with Knuckles protecting the Master Emerald, and then you get flashbacks into the past and you see his ancestors, and you see that the Emerald kind of got into the wrong hands, and then Chaos, the main bad guy of the story, you can kind of see how he's formed and how he's harnessing the power of the Emeralds, and then Eggman finds out about that, and then he tries to bring Chaos back to life, which is the big monster that you see coming out of the building at the start of the game. And towards the end of Knuckles' story, you kind of unravel how all that was happening, so it is really cool. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's watching this and hasn't played the game before, but definitely check it out because there is a really cool and engrossing story in this as well, with some really interesting areas. And then we have Amy, who's a very different kind of gameplay. She actually has kind of slower paced platforming puzzle levels, which are really fun, but you can't really just focus on the puzzles or the exploration in her stage, because the entire time you're actually being chased by this robot. And it's kind of scary actually. It kind of also feels a little bit like a child-friendly horror game at the same time. So I really enjoyed playing all the way through Amy's story for the first time. And she actually only has, I think, 3 levels, so it's a very fast story. And of course it's mostly about her just stalking Sonic, as you would expect. And then again, mixing things up even more is E102 Gamma, and this is probably the most interesting of the gameplay styles. This one is actually a very fast-paced, arcade-style shoot-'em-up. At first I thought it would be very similar to how Tails and Eggman are in Sonic Adventure 2, but I'm very happy to say that I actually much prefer the gameplay of Gamma in Sonic Adventure 1. It's a lot faster paced for one thing. You can just whiz around. He actually goes down into this different form where he sort of skates across the floor, and it's really cool to control him like that. The rest of the gameplay is kind of similar. You just use your homing attack to lock onto all different enemies and just get to the end of the stage as fast as you can. Unfortunately, all of his stages are very short. I actually wish they were 2 or 3 times the length, honestly, because it is really fun to play, and there's some really fun boss fights as well, where he fights different versions of him that Eggman has sent out, and then at the end you see him team up with Sonic, and it's a really interesting and unique gameplay style, and it kind of reminds me of Sega's old arcade days. And then finally we have Big the Cat, who is kind of the black sheep of Sonic Adventure 1, because, well, the other gameplay styles were at least fast-paced in a way. Big the Cat really slows the pace down to a crawl. This is actually a fishing minigame, so the whole purpose of Big the Cat's story is to try and find his pet Froggy, who's actually ingested one of the emeralds and he's grown a tail, and that's actually why Eggman sent all these robots out to capture him in the first place. At least I think that's what's going on. Some of the cutscenes don't entirely make 100% sense, but basically in Big's levels you go around trying to find Froggy and then reeling him in, and at first in Big stages I was really struggling to understand how to control it. And some of Big's later levels are really confusing as well, so I honestly didn't enjoy Big's story that much, at least the first time I played it. I think if I went back now and played it again, I would have a much better time with it, honestly. So, spoilers now, obviously, but I'm just going to briefly touch upon the end of the game and what you actually get for completing all of those characters' stories. And then, after you've played through all of the different characters, then of course you unlock the final story, where you get to transform into Super Sonic and take down the evil Chaos once and for all. It's a really cool end to the game, and it's so cinematic, and I love the fact, of course, that the final boss ends with Crush 40's incredible soundtrack. So when you're done with all the different stories and beaten the entire game, that's not all there is to do. Of course, this game also introduced the lovable Chow creatures, and I've actually got one on the table right there. How cute is he? Just have a look at that. I actually found it on holiday recently, and I was so excited to find a Chow just in a toy shop. You never see Chows anywhere. And this is actually brand new. I only got it like 2 years ago at this point. It's made in 2020, so it's so cool that they're still releasing Chow merchandise all these years later. I just love that. Look at it. And he sit on there. Yay! He can sit on there while we do the rest of this review. So, the Chow Garden is really interesting, and if you're coming from Adventure 2, you might start out being a little bit disappointed because it is very much simplified compared to what you're probably used to. But the Dreamcast version does have some interesting things as well. So at first I was really confused. You can't actually see the stats for any of the Chows when you pick them up or interact with them, which was a big part of raising them on the Dreamcast game. But it turns out you need to use the VMU, and once you've got a VMU and you put a Chow inside it, then not only can you see all of their stats, but there's actually a completely new minigame on there as well, where you get to control your Chow and you see him walking around all these different environments, and you can play a few minigames. You can actually raise him up on here, kind of like a Tamagotchi, and then you can put him back in the Dreamcast. And this was the first time that I'd actually tried out playing the VMU minigames on Adventure 1 and Adventure 2, which we'll cover soon, and I really enjoyed my time with it, and I think it is something really cool and really unique to the Dreamcast. Of course, the GameCube one had the Game Boy Advance compatibility, which is kind of cool, but it's not really the same as having the little VMU and just taking it around in your pocket. I think it's just so cool, and back in 1998 as well, that was just a really futuristic idea, and it's just so fun. So I really enjoyed playing around with the Chows. As well as that, there's also trial missions that you can get to from the main screen, and they give you different missions for all of the main stages, and they're actually really fun. There's 3 different ones, and once you complete them you actually get another emblem, which of course just increases the game's replay value even further. And there's so much more that I could get into, but I think we'll end the video there. I just wanted to say how much fun I had replaying Sonic Adventure, and for the most part it still holds up really well today as well. So let me know down in the comments below, are you a fan of the original Sonic Adventure? Let me know what your thoughts are, and if you want to catch the previous episode, click up here and check out my thoughts on Diddy Kong Racing, one of my favourite games on the N64.